Jordan, thanks, man. Thanks for coming on Under the Skin.
Sure.
Are you in recovery?
Yes and no. I mean,
Mate.
Well, no, like for example, I had a massive drug problem, as everyone knows.
No
right?
way.
And my drugs were Quaaludes and cocaine primarily, but I kind of never met a drug that I didn't like. Pretty much, that was my kind of story. And then I never drank though. I was not a drinker. Whatever, I just didn't enjoy it. So I can probably never say once and maybe twice in my life I was actually drunk. So when I first got sober for about 12 years, I didn't even take a sip of alcohol, anything. I was like just completely out of it. So now, I'll have a little drink here and there, but I haven't done a drug since April 17th, 1997.
Congratulations. Those powerful appetites, which most people will know from the depiction of them in the famous movie Wolf of Wall Street, looks like you've got some serious energy and appetites and drives going on. Once you start removing, like that sort of great commercial spirit and ingenuity that we see you deploy at least in the framework of the film, and that you go into in more detail in your book, like when you curb it in that area and when you curb it in the consumption of drugs and alcohol, where have you found expression of that energy, mate?
I think I haven't so much curbed my appetite for success and ingenuity as much as there are certain values within that have become far more important to me than just making money. So I think the value of earning money and, having awesome things and surrounding yourself by yachts and planes, and I still love that stuff. It's just not my highest value anymore. So my highest value now is actually giving value to people. And ironically, you make even more money when you do that. So there's sort of a delaying of gratification. I never lost that spark or spirit or desire to be ingenious or have ingenuity, so to speak. But it's just not about like the end game is that, all right, I want to do that and just make as much as I can. It's more about how do I, stay relevant in a world where everybody is sort of screaming to be relevant, to just be honest and significant. How do I give massive value to people and then monetize that value in a way that I get rich, but they also get massive success as well? So I think the big mistake I made when I was very young was I thought that the purpose of business was to make money. It's not. The purpose of a business, a well-functioning business, is to deliver value in a cost-effective way so you make money. And while it might seem like the same thing, it's actually very different, because when your purpose of business is to deliver value, it's about how do I have this awesome message and get it in front of people? How do I deliver my products in a way that when I can charge people, they are awesomely happy and I'm making an awesome amount of money?
Do you think that those values, which seem perfectly reasonable to me, have become untethered from reality? Like when we look at sort of the outliers of free market culture, the common depiction and understanding of it, Jordan, is that it's sort of, and I guess that's why your film was, or the film of your book and your life was such a success, is because it seems nihilistic, it seems free from morality, and it seems to be aligned with the most carnivorous appetites in human beings. Like there is an aspect of individuals where all you want is pleasure and power, but most of us that have played with those energies reach a point where you bottom out on it, where it creates sort of pain for yourself and others. But culturally, it does seem to me, at least, and I don't know anything like as much as you do, nowhere near obviously, it does seem from the outside looking in that the sort of the financial industry, big business, big tech, big energy, aren't like sitting around saying, how can we deliver value, unless they need it to look like that's what they're doing. Sure. So that they can carry on doing their shit.
So I think one thing that I'm sure you learned about drugs, I know I did, was that, nothing in excess is good. Like, everything up to a point can be great. And I think that, like I always say, like, using drugs is almost like a privilege. Like you get to use them until you screw up and you lose the privilege because you can't use them normally anymore, right? I think capitalism is very similar. I think human nature is very similar. So, for example, if you look at companies like Facebook and Google, they start off with this really high-minded ambition, which is like, hey, we're going to give this away free. We're going to create something that people love. We're going to solve a problem, really relieve a pain point, and to as many people as we possibly can. And we don't have to charge them, because we know if we deliver something awesome to them, then it's just going to, be easy to monetize by running the business correctly. The problem happens when you concentrate. This is human nature takes control. So you have a good idea, a noble ambition, but then there's this idea of why does the CEO of the company make 3 zillion times as much as the average employee, and why is it not more of a sharing of the wealth? Why does it always seem to evolve into this gross exaggeration of what would have been a really amazing thing? And I think that's where we look at, like, for example, like, okay, at banking. I think the purpose of banking can be very noble and it can be very important. And underbanked economies and populations are typically suffering badly. But then you see this gross exaggeration of, well, how does it turn into the financial crisis in 2008? And why would someone like a Jamie Dimon or the head of a Goldman Sachs make, 58 million? Did he really need to make that much while the average worker makes that much less? So it seems like there's almost like this unchecked, unbridled capitalism ends up becoming a gross exaggeration of itself. And I don't think that means you should condemn capitalism or big business.
That's a valuable point, mate. I've got lots of, not lots, I've got a few friends that work in the city, but the friends that I love, and they're psyched that you're coming on here. They're also, I should mention, men that are in recovery, from addiction. They look up to you as a kind of like a great icon. And now, like in the sort of context of the film, and I know enough to know that the depiction of someone's life in film is not reality because of the requirements of structure in a film and presenting a film. But it sort of seemed like the outcome of that movie, at least, was like that there wasn't a great deal of learning, other than maybe a bit of camaraderie and brotherhood between Leonardo DiCaprio's character and Jonah Hill's character, and Jonah Hill's character. When you look at life, you've already talked about having a slightly different value system. And watching that movie, like anyone, like people with addiction issues or whatever, like it's exciting, man. That's on a red list for a lot of addicts, that kind of film, because you can't watch that shit and not think like, what? It's too exciting to watch you sort of tiptoeing through the bodies at an orgy. Are you putting away drugs in that kind of way? Have you emerged from that with a kind of personal awakening, other than like, I want to do business more responsibly? Is there anything else? Like, I know you're a father, for example. I don't know what your family situation is now, or what your morals are now, or whatever. Just what has come from having such an extreme experience in the world of finance?
Yeah, so I think that on some level, what you saw in the movie and in the books, and you're right, the movie is accurate, but it also has to be structured in a way where time is collapsed, characters are collapsed to serve the narrative, right? So you get this wild, like, oh my God, in your face, like, how could this have happened? And, wow, it just seems like they were on this wild ride with no looking back and no self, you're not inspecting your own, morals and values, not growing. And obviously, if you read the book, it's a lot different. In the book, I get much more into the inner struggle and the things that were driving me to do what I did. And it's almost like there's two voices playing in my head. And I think one of the most, at least in my opinion, more profound things I say in the book is like I started to feel like I was an actor on a stage playing a role in my own life, where I almost was doing what I thought people expected me to do. And it felt like it was almost like I was on a freight carrier out of control. Now, that's a great rationalization as well to say, I'm really a good person. I was just sort of an actor on a stage, right? And I think it's part of my own rationalization to make sense of what happened to me. But here's the thing. I grew up in a really, really good family. A family where, breaking the law, getting in trouble, was just not even a possibility. My mother, for example, is the oldest woman in New York State to pass the bar. She passed in her late 60s and won pro bono lawyer of the year when she was in her mid 70s. She was a CPA in the 50s. Going down to work in the Mad Men days as a CPA, and she was blazing the trail for women in the 50s. And my dad was a CPA's wild man in the movie, funny guy, but he was a CPA, the most ethical guy I ever met, never got a speeding ticket, right? And I was sent out in the world with those sort of values and morals. I'd seen that my brother's very successful as an attorney. And then I sort of took this left turn in Albuquerque, so to speak, and my life took this wild turn, and it became one foot in front of the other, and I went in this direction we all saw. When it ended, and even before it ended, I would say when I got sober in 1997, that's, when you're doing drugs, it quiets the critics. It's a lot of things that, it's very easy not to look and inside yourself and say, what the hell is going on? And, whether the drugs came first or the guilt came first and chicken and egg sort of thing. Who's to really say? But because it was kind of both things and a little bit of back pain that served as a great justification to keep doing drugs even after my back stopped hurting, right? It's very complicated addiction. And also I just liked it because drugs are fun. I mean, so there's all these different things feeding into that. But once I got sober, it became very easy for me to go back to being the person I was that my parents sent out into the world. Like, it wasn't like I had to change myself. It's more like I had to become the person I originally was and say, what the hell happened to me? And I think one of the funniest lines ever, in a private seminar I gave, was a small meeting in Australia where the CEO of one of their big newspaper groups said, Jordan, it's like you were kidnapped by aliens for 12 years and now you're back again. I wish that was the case. It wasn't, but I would say it was very easy for me to go back into the world again after it was over and just be this really ethical person that, I think I'm probably one of the most ethical businessmen I know in the world. I almost err on the side of letting myself getting taken advantage of because I know I'm really good at making money and I can afford to be that way. I know I can still monetize things without having to cut corners. Biggest mistake I made, Russell, was cutting corners. That was the mistake I made.
Yeah, you had obviously like a rare ability to spot opportunity that was there in plain sight for anyone with the vision to observe it. That's clear. And the sort of the ferocious energy required to get any idea off the ground. It takes, there are so many obstacles. Anyone that's pursuing anything, a career in art or creativity or a career in any genre or discipline, there is resistance to success. It feels like there's stuff that you have to overcome and requires a great deal of power. And I like you, Jordan, I don't think that those energies are benign or malevolent in and of themselves. They can be directed. Like, you can take someone like you or indeed me and use the energy that we've got to create real positive things that have a positive impact on, loads of people's lives. Or we can be very, very selfish, self-involved, and I've had a go at both of those versions. And do you sometimes still feel, do you ever get the pang of like, the craziness, the madness? Do you ever feel the call of the wild?
I do. I mean, of course I do, but it doesn't, I think the call of the wild is not like, let me go out and just break the law and rip people off. Like, the call of the wild is not that. It's not about, like, that's almost a lazy version of success. In other words, it's more fun to say, imagine success is a game of some sort, right? And, money's represents the scorecard. Are you winning? Are you losing in the whole game of business and life, right? And, to say that the one thing I would say that really drove me to come back from all that in jail was the faces of my children. I can imagine, that I didn't come back, the impact it would have on my kids and not being a role model to them and knowing that their dad could be rich but do it right. And that was such a huge driver for me that there was like no way I was going to get in trouble again because that would be against my highest value is my family, my children, and their having their respect and love. Now, they would always love me, but it's very different to respect someone, and to like them than versus to love them. And I think that was one of the chief drivers for me making the comeback was my children. When I wrote the book and was in jail and felt like there was days I couldn't go on, I imagined not having them in my life anymore and the negative impact it had. And that really allowed me to manifest that much energy to come back from such a terrible spot.
Did you do what kind of prison was it that you were in? Was it high security, low security in England? There's like A, B, C category. What kind of
So it was a minimum security prison. I was saying, I wasn't like, worried about, I don't know what like type of language you use here on the podcast. So you could always edit this
whatever
out.
You want, yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't getting butt fucked by Bubba at night. It wasn't like, a bar shower and a bar of soap in the shower. That wasn't the issue. But jail sucks, no matter how low security it is. And it's embarrassing, and you're surrounded by all the losers of life, and you're losing the game of life. And when you're there, the world goes on, and no matter how minimum security it might be, it was tennis courts there. You could pay someone to do your laundry and serve you coffee in the morning. But you know what? Jail sucks, and there's no way around that. And I had to have my kids come visit me in jail. And now again, my bunkmate was Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. By the way.
No way, cool.
I swear to God, he was my bunkmate, and he was there for selling bongs, not pot, bongs on the internet. And I was like, he got a year and a day. I'm like, fuck, if this guy got a year and a day, I should get 1,000 years. Like, the good news is he shouldn't have gotten any time. So it's not a good analogy. But he was my bunkmate, and he was the one that actually got me to write the book. So it was, you make the best of where you are, but jail sucks. And there's no way around that. You could, try to say, oh, minimum security, it was still jail.
Do you think there were ethical consequences to your crimes, let's call them? That's I guess how they're framed. Like, do you think it hurt people? Like, were the kind of people who were investing in stock, and I don't know enough about financial markets to know exactly how sort of inflating value and all that kind of stuff, what's going down. But do you think that people were actually hurt beyond financially, and were they people that could afford to be hurt? Was it like little old ladies, or was it like kind of rich people, or what?
It was the latter, for sure. And interestingly, this issue came up on my own podcast. I had the FBI agent who indicted me. He's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. And it was always this weird narrative that poor people had lost money. It just was false. It was completely false. We just didn't. In fact, the whole idea of Stratton, and it was in the movie, by the way, it slipped through quickly where Lee goes, why can't we call rich people? Like, the whole premise of Stratton was, wait a second, we started off calling average moms and dads, but it was very small investments. And then one day I had this idea, wait a second, why are we calling poor people? We should be calling the richest 1%. The problem was you couldn't get these kids to a high enough level of training, sales-wise and market-wise, to talk to these people. So when I first tested the idea of calling the richest 1%, people who could afford to lose, but also who could afford to invest a lot. I don't want to even say my purposes were that noble. Yes, I was clearly aware that it's much better that if I don't lose poor people money, right? I could justify that, right? But the other side of that was also like to say, well, why do people rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Well, why am I calling someone who barely can invest $50 if I can call a multi-millionaire who can easily invest $100,000 and won't care? He'll laugh if it's missing because he's getting ripped off all over Wall Street. It's like another of his 8 accounts, right? So I was targeting specifically those people, right? And I invented a system of sales training that allowed these kids to close those deals. Those are the 1-2 punch that created Stratton, right? And that system I created is still used all over the world by people ethically, and it's an amazing system, right? What is
it?
What?
What is the system?
Oh, it's called the straight line system. It's very well known around the world. And it was the core of my comeback originally was the straight line system, which was teaching people how to, average people that are not natural born closers, how to close an extremely high level. And I get probably 50 emails a day. You change my life.
Do it on me.
You like this, huh?
Yeah. Can you do the straight line system on me, like so as I understand it?
Do you understand the straight line at all? Are you aware of what it is or no?
No, sir.
Okay, great. So the straight line basically is it's really a communication strategy and we call it goal-oriented communication. So it's very different for you and I to have a conversation, which is a dialogue back and forth. I'm not trying to influence you. I'm trying to explain things to you. I'm not trying to convince you to think a certain way as me. It's a really natural two-way dialogue. It's very different than when you speak to someone, whether on the phone or in person or on Zoom, and you have an outcome in mind. You have a goal. You're trying to close them. You're trying to get them to think the same way you are, right? So in the terms of goal-oriented communication, what you have is you have this open, and then you have a close, and the close represents the successful outcome of you getting the person to see things the way you do. That could be to buy a $50 item. It could be to win an argument, a negotiation, buy a new car, sign an insurance policy, vote for a certain president, have the jury acquit your client. So it goes to everything in life, not just sales. It's communication. So, basically, I always say is that at the highest level, sales is really about the transfer of emotion. And the primary emotion that you're transferring is the emotion of certainty. They must be certain that when you think of certainty, what is it? That the product makes sense. So people buy products, goods and services to resolve pain points, to feel like they're back in control again, to fill core needs, sometimes secondary needs, but they have a reason why they buy. And when they say yes, it's because they're absolutely certain that, this is the best solution to my pain or my situation, right? So we think of that. Okay, so imagine a continuum of certainty. 1 means they're uncertain. They think it's the biggest piece of shit in the world. 10 is a state of absolute certainty. Greatest product since sliced bread, right? So question, if you're trying to close someone on any product, good or service, where do you want them on the scale? At a 1 or a 10 when you ask
10,
for the order?
10,
A 10, right? So let's say you do that. Let's say you did a great job the way you presented your product. You just kicked ass. They're like, wow, this is the best product in the world. It's the best value proposition. It's great finding. Unbelievable. It looks great, smells great, feels great, right? Question, will they buy from you? Now, if I answer that question in a large group, I was, yeah, of course they'll buy. And the answer is, that's not true. The answer is maybe, as in maybe they will, maybe they won't. What if in the process of you making them certain, you did it in a way where they no longer trust you or like you or don't connect with you? Question, will you buy from someone you don't trust? The answer is no, unless you're absolutely positively desperate, right? But the answer is no, you won't. So it's not enough that they're certain about the product. They also need to be certain about you, the salesperson, that you're trustworthy, they connect with you, that you do the right thing by them, that you're ethical, that you're honest, that you have the best interest at heart. So that's the second element that must line up. So let's say in your presentation, you're very careful and you do that too. By the time they're done, they say, you ask for the order for the first time. They say, wow, that's the greatest product in the world and just love it. And the sales, what a nice guy. Russell's so ethical. He really took his time to answer my question. He seems to care about me. I'm just like Russell. Question, will they buy now? The answer still is maybe. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Because what if they don't trust the company that stands behind the product? See, if any one of those three things are missing, people don't say, I don't trust you, Russell. I don't like you, Russell. I don't like your company. That's not what they'll say. You know what they'll say? They'll say, sounds good, Russell. Let me think about it. Yeah, Russell, sounds great. I'll call you back. I got to talk to my wife. So what happens is all these common objections pop up as smoke screens for uncertainty. So what happens is typically when the salesperson gets hit with an objection, they'll try to overcome that objection. So you say, I need to speak to my wife. You say, Russell, I understand you want to speak to your wife, but I've been doing this for quite some time. And I know you really don't have to speak to your wife for a decision like this. She makes decisions every day without you. You make them without her. Let me ask you this, Russell. So Russell, why don't you do this? Just start right now. I want you to buy. It's a great deal. And I try to close you again. Will you buy? Never. You know why? Because the objection for your wife was just a stall, was a smoke screen for uncertainty. So you'll say, yeah, it sounds good. Let me just do some research, and you'll switch to a new objection. You objection hop, right? This is what plays out in the world all day long in sales. So rather than that, if someone hits me with an objection, first I'll say, well, Russell, I hear what you're saying, but let me ask you this. Does the product make sense to you? Do you like the product? I actually loop back. And you'll say, yeah, it sounds pretty good. I'm like, it sounds pretty good. That's not a 10. I'll say, exactly, Russell, it is a great deal. In fact, let me say this, the true beauty is, and I'll resell you on the product and then tell you more about myself. There's it's an intricate system, but basically what it does, what I just did is quickly unpack simply how natural-born salespeople operate without thinking about it. In other words, what I realized, there was certain people like myself as a natural-born closer, I was running these intricate loops and strategies without ever thinking about it because my brain was wired naturally for sales and for communication. I knew intuitively that if I say to someone, well, John, what's the worst that could possibly happen? That it's a very different thing than saying, John, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen? If I say to you, John, how you doing today, John? It says, I know, I don't give a fuck how you doing today. It's a perfunctory greeting we use in communication. I don't care about you. Versus, hey, John, how you doing today? You're like, whoa, he actually cares. If I say to you, hey, John, it's Jordan Belfort calling from XYZ company, you're like, oh, fuck, another salesman call. How did he get my number? You're like, fuck, I can't believe this. How'd you let this guy, because you hear my voice. I say, hi, I'm Jordan Belfort, the declaration, calling from XYZ company in New York. You're like, oh, shit. And already you hate the guy on the phone versus me saying, hey, Russell, Jordan Belfort, calling from XYZ company in New York. You're like, who? What? And I phrase it as a question. Your brain goes into, do I know Jordan Belfort? Well, my mother told me it's really rude to forget people's names. I met them. Since you're 5 years old, the programming takes hold. So there's all this shit, Russell, that happens, like natural-born closers automatically, the way their brain is wired, they use tonality, body language, and words to convey very powerful messages that move people both logically and emotionally, and end up at this outcome of getting certainty for all three things. Now, what I realized is that you could actually, in this one moment in time, I realized what was happening, what I could close and my kids couldn't. And it's just like this moment I think I was tapping into the source where I felt like I all of a sudden information that wasn't even my own. And in this one evening, I invented this new way of teaching salespeople by drawing a straight line and saying, this is the open, this is the close, and using that as a basis for the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. You'd love them to stay on the straight line, but typically they go off the straight line, off into Pluto or Uranus, which is not a great place to be in sales for most people, at least I don't judge, right? But the point is that it's the idea of, number one, you must take control of the sale. How do you do that? $1 million question. Well, number one, people, I don't know if you want me to I could go on and on for hours and hours about this stuff. So
it's great.
But that's the essence of it.
It's great. It's great. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I understand, man. Like I hear the sort of the neuro-linguistic programming component from it. Like there's stuff that I identify with. I'm like a entertainer, so like I have to persuade large groups of people to come with me on a journey. I have to be aware if what I'm saying is objectionable, unpleasant, or unsavory. And while you're saying this, it seems to me that you could, as you said in your preposition, like that you could mobilize this technology towards anything, as you said, to a political candidate, to ideologies, anything.
For good or evil, malevolent or benevolent. Like any powerful weapon, benevolent or benevolent.
One of the things this is a more parochial use of these ideas, is that if I'm in conversation with people like in a cab or a street or whatever, I try not to operate within the parameters of prescribed conversation. I don't want to just operate on that that sort of droning white noise of communication.
Sure.
How do you get beyond the edifices that people put out in front of you? Sales, where there is but if I'm chatting to someone in a cab, I don't have no objective beyond pass the time, and if I'm in the right frame of mind, make this person feel happy for the short period of time that I'm with them. But if you have a clear objective that isn't in alignment, say, with a higher set of values, if it is about a commercial exchange as opposed to I truly believe this ideology could change the world, then you find yourself sometimes at odds. Particularly the way those are some of the best scenes I think in the movie, is when you see your character doing miming the fucking and coming up with that stuff, and the way that the crowd's gathered around you. When you see someone in their genius, always beautiful to see someone doing their thing that's coming from, as you sort of characterized it, from the source, something that's sort of beyond ordinary human understanding and communication, the creation of community. What an incredible ability that is, how nuanced that is, the reading of emotion, the unwillingness to accept cliche and trite exchange, the use of tonal variety in language. Man, I love that stuff. I love it. And I feel like it's something that could be applied towards, this is a sort of a pivotal and interesting time politically and ideologically in the world. Which ideas succeed? For me, we live in a culture where the ideas that succeed are the ideas that have the most power behind them, and by that I mean political and economic power. If Facebook and big tech want an idea to succeed, if the Democratic Party want an idea to succeed, that idea has a good chance of succeeding. Ideas that might be better for ordinary people, sharing, the decentralized power, true democracy, these ideas are stamped out in the crib, because they don't have money and power behind them. No one's running experiments to say this particular Pfizer product or this particular Coca-Cola product is shit. No one's paying for that lab.
Right.
That. So even on the level of objective data, it ain't coming out. So so persuasion and presentation and framing, that is reality. So yeah, man. So another thing I wanted to check with you, Jordan, it sounds to me would you say, you often use the analogy of it's like a game, and this is a sort of a spiritual idea as well as a relatively modern one. Is this a simulation that we're in? And in religious scripture, it's an illusion, it's a veil, none of this stuff is real. In this game, do you think that what you did was wrong, or that, in a sense, it was just a slip up around the rules? And as a sort of a follow-up question of that, because I know you're a man who can chat, do you think that there's people in that world, i.e. 2008 and all of that bundling derivative gear that went down, that are doing far more criminal stuff, but have just got a better hookup when it comes to the layout of those rules, and better relationships when it comes to being persecuted for any breach of those rules, and the ability to change those rules if it fucking suits them.
It's very, very difficult for me to say that, people did a lot worse to me and do a lot worse to me every day, because it senses that I'm minimizing what I did wrong, or the two rights, don't make a wrong, or whichever way it would flow. Listen, when I first got out of jail and was dealing with my comeback and coming to terms with what had happened, I felt it's not guilt. It's more like remorse. I think is a much healthier emotion. Is the active form of like just going out there and doing good works, right? A lot of things happened along the way. Like number one, finding out that people that had lost money weren't being paid back. Like the money I was paying was not going to anybody, that they couldn't find any more investors. So very early on, they distributed the initial like 20 million or something, and they ran out of people to give money to, and they had to return 500,000 to the treasury because they couldn't find any more investors. And because they didn't know what was really lost, it was a guess that the 100 million, well, whatever, they couldn't find any more investors. Now, I didn't find out about that till 2011. I was giving millions of more, and I still pay a little bit each month, right? But no one's getting the money, so it's a little frustrating that the investors, whoever wanted money got it back. They were mostly rich people, didn't give a shit. They wrote it off in their taxes. It would have been a bigger hassle to try to go and claim a few dollars. So, it's a great rationalization too. I just don't want you to think I'm minimizing, or anyone listening, because I'm not. Like it's more complex. You could say, what I did was wrong, but on the degree of wrong compared to 2008, forget about it. I was a saint compared. I didn't bankrupt Iceland and Greece and bring the entire world financial system to its knees, and then ask the taxpayers to bail me out and kept my job. And I think that's why, for the most part, I think I'm pretty well loved by most people in the world that understand. Like I have so many fans, so they get that. They realize that the people that really did stuff never went to jail, never paid for their crimes, and they're still in power, right? And that doesn't bother me. I think it's just a fact that most rational people know at this point. That, you look at the end of the movie The Big Short, which I loved, and there's this like false ending. And then all the bad guys, they all went to jail. Ha, just kidding. No one went to jail. And there's one poor schnook who did nothing, that served as the fall guy, that did a year, and he was like a low-level guy, and everybody else got off, right? And people, we laugh, but inside we know it's not right. And it bothers people. Now you see all these things pop up as a result. Well, it started with Occupy Wall Street, which was kind of didn't really go anywhere. But then you see even the Trump revolution. What happened with Trump and this sort of movement towards sort of, the individualized states versus the world, this globalism versus, nation states being individual, right? So a huge struggle on that level. And I think a lot of it comes from the seething anger, things like Bitcoin, decentralized finance. There's this need for people, people know there's something rotten at the core. So they're yearning for something else, an alternative, but the system will always try to protect itself as much as it can. And, and change is never quickly. When it happens at the end, it's hard and fast, but there's years and years and years of this sort of slow slogging towards an idea while it gathers momentum. When it finally reaches its pinnacle, it can happen in an instant, but the point to get to that can be very long and drawn out. So I think that right now, yes, I think that there's people every day doing far worse than I ever did. By a long shot, it doesn't make what I did right. It's just an interesting point to note that, why is justice seemingly not meted out fairly? Why do bad people get away with doing things and never seem to pay the price for that? What is that about? And is it about just people in power giving their friends a pass? I think it's more complex than that. I really do. I think it's really gets down to very basic things like the cops are always outwitted to some extent by the criminals. Like you get to a certain point, it's like cops. Here's another analogy, and I love my analogies, right? Is that policemen can be wrong 1,000 times. They have to be right once. I don't know if all the people are going to get away with it in the end. You still might see people paying, the wheels of justice grind slow. Like right now in the world of crypto, there's just massive fraud every day on an unprecedented level. I can't believe this is happening. Every day there's massive manipulation, pump and dump schemes to make my stuff look like it was child's play every day. And yet nothing seems to be happening. But you never know, because there's as they say, the statute of limitations, well, it's 5 years, so who knows what's going to happen.
With these, like, with the former, where it's like, blue chip companies, Wall Street, revolving door between, Washington and Wall Street, that stuff seems like there's so much systemic investment, so much cultural and collateral wedded in those systems that even when something like 2008 happens, which to me as a layperson, it seemed like they kind of knew that it was going to happen and that the consequences would be so seismic that it would be impossible for the government not to bail them out because of the scale of it. And the fact that nobody was persecuted or prosecuted or other as a result of that suggests that that's a theory that somewhat holds water, right? Is that possible?
Yeah. It's certainly,
like
there's obviously, the government, and I think they made the right decision at the time that, I think they didn't want you to stick your credit card in the ATM machine and nothing came out. And I think they were very close to that with AIG and Goldman Sachs and after Lehman crashed. There was this moment when it could have happened. And I think they did the right thing. That being said, there was no reason why the people that were behind, like I'll tell you who the most culpable people of all were, the rating agencies. They were the ones that allowed this to happen. They were supposed to be the bastion of integrity. Like, this is rated a certain thing. This is AAA. This is a piece of shit. The whole thing was facilitated by the rating agencies and their desire to earn fees and to take something that was truly a piece of shit and stamp it AAA. And that's what allowed everything else to happen. Without that one piece of the puzzle, it could have never happened. Now, you could say the same thing without the bankers to create the proxy with them, but I'll tell you, those rating agencies, like, they're supposed to be, like, the whole purpose of a rating, like, okay, Wall Street firms, they broke the law and screwed people. Like, well, what kind of surprise is that? That's what Wall Street firms do. Isn't that what they're supposed to do? Like, no one's, I think, shocked to find out that Goldman Sachs was like going wild. That's Goldman Sachs. Eh? But the rating agencies, well, isn't their whole sole focus to be like the empirical arbiters of good and bad, and with sophisticated, not lettering A, AAA minus, and like with this formula? No, they were completely on the take. All right. And they, no matter how bad something was, it could have been the biggest piece of shit in the world. And they'd say, oh, well, it's 100 pieces of shit wrapped together equals greatness. No, 100 pieces of shit together is a giant lump of shit. Right. And that's really what happened. They stamped those lumps of shit AAA. And then the brokerage firms, the bankers wrapped those up into these instruments. And then, people that couldn't really afford to buy homes and knew they could never pay them back said, well, why shouldn't I take the home? Why not? You're right. Why wouldn't you take the home? Right. And the mortgage brokers showed them how to lie in their applications. The underwriters were told to look the other way because they were making money. And then who got fucked? Iceland, Greece. They sold this shit around the world and literally destroyed. I was in Iceland speaking right after this happened. I got to tell you, it was an ugly, ugly thing. It was really, really bad. There was real consequences to that, to countries that still have not recovered to this very day.
Yeah, the impact of it financially, culturally, and as you said at the beginning, Jordan, even politically, are still being felt. That it has created isolationism, sort of like nationalism, suspicion and cynicism. And in a sense, quite rightly, but like, I once listened to Steve Bannon talk at Oxford, just on the internet. I didn't go. And he was, when he was describing that quantitative easing process and the banker bailout, and that this is happening under Obama, that the whole idea that these are this is the persuasion politically that are meant to be for the population and for ordinary people, and to show and demonstrating the degree to which they are in bed with big business corporations, the financial world. In a sense, what that does is it, as you say, it makes ordinary people recognize you cannot trust that world. You cannot cut them off. You can't have any trust in them. Now, like, it seems to me that you were a person that was able to enter into that world and at your own level to an extraordinary degree, looking at the amount of excess and wealth and opportunity and power that you created from scratch. Really, really incredible. And by your own acknowledgement, without minimizing what you did and not seeking in any way to, you've been really clear about that. But it's nothing compared to what's institutionalized. Nothing. It's just sort of irrelevant. And what could ever, I was just wondering for a moment there, what would have happened? I understand what you're saying, we go to the ATM and no cash would come out. If AIG was allowed to fold and Goldman Sachs, if all those things crash, it's a sort of de facto revolution, right? It's the system would have collapsed. Is that right?
I think it would have been very similar to what happened in the 30s. I think there would have been a massive depression, economic contraction, huge unemployment. And I think then the U.S. would have recovered. I don't think it would be the end of the world as we know it, because I think that, the Constitution, is flawed as it can be, is still pretty strong here. And I think there's still an underlying belief that, the U.S. has this, citizens feel like it's almost this destiny to be the greatest country in the world. It's taught to us now, not so much in school, at least when I was in school, that we're the greatest country in the world. And I think it would have come back and bounced back, but there would have been massive amount of pain along the way. Now, I think what's really happened, though, is that pain has simply been deferred. It's been transferred onto our children and our grandchildren because, there's this sort of entity, this gigantic octopus that sits on top of the economy. It's not Goldman Sachs, it's the Federal Reserve that literally has the ability to just print as much money as they want, and they basically debase the financial system's fiat currency, and they, printed trillions upon trillions of dollars. They call it quantitative easing, so they put fancy labels on it to show there's some science and mathematics behind it, and it's a good thing. But they kicked the can down the road. They've been kicking the can down the road since 1987, since the stock market crashed in 87. And then they've really been kicking the can down the road since George Bush, the older one, got on the TV set in 2001 after September 11th, said, if you don't keep shopping, the terrorists win. And there was just this effort to keep things going when the dot-com bubble crashed. The terrorists attacked and brought down the towers. People were scared to go out and shop. And yet somehow, how did we end up going right back up again? No matter what happens, the government is and this is, either my hat's off to them or they're the biggest criminals and it's going to all come crashing down. I think the jury's still out. I think ultimately there's going to be hell to pay, but they've managed to keep kicking the can down the road to interrupt the normal cycles of boom and bust that have been characterizing capitalist economies since way back when. Since, I saw a doc recently back in Rome. It happened literally that far back when they started debasing the currency, and it just never ends well. You saw it in exaggerated forms in Nazi Germany or in pre-Nazi Germany in the 1920s that led to Nazi Germany. You saw it happen in places like Zimbabwe, where they have $1 trillion notes that you can't buy a loaf of bread with, right? That's typically what happens when you just print amazing amounts of money. The dollar has this weird ability, because it's a reserve currency for the world, that we get away with shit that no one else can get away with. And also, no one really knows, because the Fed, who knows what's really going on at the Federal Reserve? So I think there's going to be, at some point in time, massive hell to pay, like with this budget deficit. Like, what's that about? Like, you're just going to run this deficit, it's going to grow and grow and grow until it's literally going to be bigger than any metric you can think of, because there's no way to get rid of it, unless, of course, Satoshi Nakamoto was actually the U.S. government. It's all a long game. They own all the Bitcoin, actually. And who knows what's really going on? Nothing would shock me at this point. You know what I'm saying? But, they've been kicking the can down the road since 2001 in a big way. And at some point, something's got to give.
So it's ultimately an artificially sustained system. So when there's that kind of pragmatic discourse around free market capitalism, it's the best of all possible alternatives. No other system would work. You can't decentralize finance. You can't have people trading. You can't have alternative financial systems. What's being held up as the kind of great monolith and the sort of to which there is no real alternative is a kind of illusion that's held in place by, as you used the phrase earlier, sort of various forms of smoke and mirrors and sort of skullduggery, really. It's sooner or later the reality will have to be addressed, right? I
don't think that's true, though. See, I don't think that this centralized system is the only way. And in fact, we're proving right now through cryptocurrency. And what really bugs me about these shit coins out there that are being dumped on people every single day. I get 5 offers a day to represent a shit coin of the day. It's like literally they'll pay me a few $1,000,000 to go say, buy this shit coin, right? That's very different than Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Matic, some of these other crypto blockchains that really have an ability to make dramatic change for the better. Or maybe not, but at least they have a chance, and there really is some major utility behind them to change the world and make the world a more, economically fair place or balanced place. And, to have served populations have access to decentralized finance and banking. Now, there's a lot of pain and a lot of shit that's going to happen before it really takes hold, DeFi, in a global way that is regulated and and that doesn't rip people off blind, because the bad actors always get in the beginning and try to, when you have a dark market like that, there's a lot of people that just want to make a quick buck, and that's what you have happening right now with crypto. So let me be clear, like when I'm talking about crypto scams, I don't mean Ethereum or Bitcoin. I actually am a bull now on this stuff for the long term, because I think there's utility and it makes the world better. I don't think this is a situation like it's Betamax or VHS, meaning there's these two systems. There's centralized banking and decentralized finance. At the end of the day, DeFi is going to win and there'll be no more central banks. I think that's nonsense. I think it's a lot more like Android and iPhone. You're going to have these two systems that both run side by side, and you'll probably have a lot more people use DeFi because it's decentralized, like Android's the perfect analogy, because it's decentralized. It's only software run by all different companies around the world use the Android software, right? And they're all different manufacturers, versus iPhone's a closed system. So iPhone represents centralized banking. It's the higher class, so to speak, more expensive, but all these things and protections and control in place, versus the Wild West of the Android technology. At the end of the day, I think that's what's going to happen. You'll have probably 70% of the world in DeFi, 30% using centralized institutions, and you're going to have these very, very well regulated on-ramps and off-ramps between the two. And I hope that's the way the world ends up, because it'll be a much better world when there'll be two alternatives that run side by side. I think it's going to be a likely outcome, but I do not think that DeFi replaces central banking, and I don't think central banking wipes out DeFi.
Could DeFi lead to communities, entire communities that are separate from centralized authority using these kind of currencies? Could you say, we don't want nothing to do with you, we're not paying tax, we're not paying mortgages, we're our own thing, we operate on this, leave us alone? Is that plausible?
I never say no, it's stupid, right? But strongly doubt that. I think that what you're going to find is that the governments, listen, the reason I was a bear in Bitcoin, I thought Bitcoin was going to zero. In 2017, I publicly stated when it was at 20,000, this is a piece of shit. It's going to zero. I said, I love blockchain tech. I always loved blockchain technology, but I was very much against this inflationary thing I saw happening with Bitcoin. They were driving up the price. It was a massive bubble. And I was right that, I said sell, and it went down to back to 2000. But I was wrong also, because I said it's never coming back. So I was right and I was wrong. I love to admit that I'm wrong. And, and you can change your, people say, why do you change your mind? People change their mind all the time based on new information, right? So back in the day, when I saw the Bitcoin of 2017, scam, pumping, and they were pumping it up. It was being manipulated up to that level of 20,000. But because at the heart of Bitcoin is something really great there, something really valuable there, it solves a real fucking problem, right? It came back. And thankfully it did, and it came back from the doldrums. And also remember, back then part of the reason it dropped was because it was regulation from China coming in. Now they're re-regulating it again even more stringently. So it came back, and now I think the Bitcoin / Ethereum of 2021 is very different than 2016, 2017. It's far more widely held. It has far more utility, and I believe we're getting to this moment, this tipping point here, which I want to be a part of, which is actually making it so you can use these things for legitimate commerce and not just speculation. So right now it's being used primarily for speculation and a store of value, but it's not a particularly great store of value because it's so volatile, but certainly used for speculation. And there are some really powerful things built into Bitcoin that make it that way, like certain types of scarcity, the way it's brilliant. Whoever did this, it's probably the U.S. who did it. No, surprise! It's like, when the police want to catch all the crooks, they form a company and with a fence, and it turns out it's like a bad movie, right? Guess what? It's the NSA that invented Bitcoin. And scam, we got you all now. Oh, China, here, we're paying off our deficit. Here's 50 Bitcoin. It's now $1 million. I'm probably kidding there, but who knows what's going on, right? But the point is that I believe that Bitcoin is crossed over where it's widely held enough. There's enough computer nodes around the world. I don't think it's going away. And I think that is real use for it. And I sincerely hope that the shit coins of the day start getting the people deserve what they get. And I don't have to say see everyone go to jail, but it's got to stop because it's just designed to separate people from their money. Let me tell you what's happening, Russell. There's people sitting in their rooms, in their little offices every day. How do we create the latest shit coin of the day and pump it and dump it on unwitting investors? The conversations, if you go into certain rooms in Telegram, it's that brazen. Like they're saying, I'm like, guys, please, shh. You don't fucking write this shit down. You can't say it's called a paper fucking trail, right? You know, at least when I was doing it at Stratton, I'd be like in a quiet room, we'd check for bugs, and then we'd have that terrible conversation of like, okay, we're going to buy it back at 5 and then we'll sell it at 9. Like, that's like the most illegal conversation you could have. And those things were done like with, you know, with security checks for bugs and once every 2 months, like, and everything else was legit at Stratton. This is just, they're out there talking about pump and dumps as if they're legal. It's crazy, Russell. It's absolutely crazy. And the sad thing is I was in Italy 2 weeks ago in Venice giving a speech. 25 people, relatively wealthy people, great people. And there was one person, man's daughter was there. And I said that she was 21. I said, who's bought Bitcoin? Or any crypto? And 10 raised their hand. One was this girl. I said, what did you buy? She goes, Dogecoin. I said, why'd you buy it? She goes, Elon Musk said so. I said, what happened? I lost all my money, all my life savings. Now, I'm not here to condemn Elon Musk. I actually like Elon Musk. I'm a fan of his. I don't know if he realizes, though, that, like, you know, there's a huge danger here. And, you know, when you're out there with that much power in the marketplace, you know, he says things, and I'm sure he doesn't have evil intentions. I think he's a good guy. I always thought he was. But, like, there's real damage happening from these sort of very speculative coins. And it's always the littlest, the smallest person that ends up getting screwed in the end. The sophisticated people, they always get out and they make money. That's the problem, because the crypto at its heart is great. It's amazing. It can free the world from a lot of shit, I believe. So, you know, that's the story.
That's the problem that it could solve. It could free the world from a lot of shit because it's a parallel economy that could be to some degree untethered from some of the centralized problems that you've described at length.
I believe that, and I believe there's going to be a lot of pain between now and then. And I believe governments are going to try their best to stamp it out as much as they can at this point. The genie's kind of out of the bottle. I think it's very easy for authoritarian countries like China to say, no more. We don't like it, and they're doing that, and they realize, oh, you know, enough is enough. We're going to launch our own digitized yuan, which is the scariest thing in the world, by the way. And I have great respect for the Chinese because they're fucking brilliant, by the way. I mean, they really got this shit down. It's like capitalism with no human rights and no one to say what an unbelievable way to make money. Like that's why they're doing so well. It's like pure, unbridled capitalism, and like they need a power for a damn. The village, get the fuck out. I will give you some money to go resell. No lawsuit for 10 years in the Supreme Court about rights and eminent domains. Like, get the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? And they have this thing now called the social credit score, which you probably know about. Just imagine the intersection of a social credit score with programmable, digitized yuan. Holy fuck. I mean, all of a sudden, like, you don't say something right, your bank account goes like down like 5%. It's like a bad Orwellian movie. Seriously, like what could happen with this? And it represents almost the mirror of what, you know, Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto was trying to do. Isn't life always like that, though? There's always like the mirror. It's always like, if there's something good, there's always the evil counterpart that runs concurrent. It's almost human nature in the way life is. There's a yin, there's going to be a yang, you know?
You find that in yourself still? Do you find that there are still these competing energies? Do you find, along with your idealism and the part of you that wants to create opportunities for other people, that wants to find, you know, you clearly got a little bit of a Robin Hood instinct in there somewhere, even though that word's been tainted by recent events. You know, like do you have that still? And is there still the part of you in you that is sort of somewhat rapacious and appetite-led?
In the original Forbes article that was written, it was true. There was a Forbes article written for the movie. I mean, in that scene where she comes in, I get bashed, the Wolf of Wall. It was an article written, right? In there, the famous quote is like some twisted version of Robin Hood who takes from the rich and gives to himself and his merry band of brokers. Like, you know, it was like, that was pretty clever, I guess, right? You could giggle at it, right? You know, she was giving me a jab. But, you know, I think that, you know, I think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I really believe that. I think that there's a way for this to really, with decentralized finance, to really go well. I think I kind of might have lost your question in the way I was thinking about the Robin things.
Yeah, I was saying that these instincts still competing in you in a good wolf, bad wolf way, but which is, you know, pretty apposite. But I was thinking, now I'm thinking more, knowing that how much power is wrapped up in the preservation of these systems, knowing that, you know, something as effective as the sort of the cryptocurrencies that you say are legit, the ones that are above the shitcoin, lower league stuff, do you think that there is any way that ordinary people operating together can change the balance of power from the sort of the estates of centralized corporate power and governmental power? Do you think there is ever a chance for, through, you know, even through these kind of financial means that you've helped us to understand better, a way of leveling the score a little bit. So ordinary people who are looking to invest in, whether it's, Bitcoin in any variety or any derivative thereof, or, imitation thereof, or conventional stocks and shares, that impulse that's behind that, an impulse that you clearly read and understand well, because you're able to recognize that when they're saying they're talking to the wife, that ain't what they mean really. You seem to be able to read what people's intention is, what it is within them. And what you know, and I know, that what people in a sense want is to be kind of free, to be able to live their lives free from, whether the octopus is the Federal Reserve or power structures more broadly, bearing down on us, preventing us from being who we are, that the game is rigged against ordinary folk. Do you think that these powers can ever be challenged, or do you think they got the game sewn up?
So now you're at the most profound thing of all. You just hit on something, I think, inadvertently and inadvertently, a combination of the two. Why? Why is this, why is crypto so popular? It's trade. Why would people buy shit coins? Why are people so into cryptocurrency? Why do influencers and all the people that are coming up, the younger people, why does the young people, they love this shit? Let me tell you why. There's a reason why. It's very profound, Russell. And I think this will clarify a lot of things for your listeners. You say, why are people so much into, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Matic, or whatever coin? And there's a lot of good coins as well. So I don't want to, it's only not, there's a few other good ones as well. And then for every good one, there's 100 terrible ones, right? But here's what's happening. The reason the younger generation loves this stuff is because it is the great equalizer into itself as an investment. When you buy a stock, when you try to invest in stocks or the stock market or oil or anything that is dominated by Wall Street, that has fundamentals involved, meaning you're actually having very well-educated school people that are using 70 years of knowledge and research and statistics to look at companies, analyze them based on proven fundamentals, earnings, assets, cash flow, debt to equity, or things that younger people, except if you're a major in economics, would understand. No one understands that stuff. So that gives Wall Street a huge edge in these investments because they are using knowledge of is it a good, because in Wall Street, is it a good company? Is it a bad company? Well, having that knowledge, even a slight bit, gives you an incredible edge. It's Warren Buffett. That's the perfect example is Warren Buffett, long-term investor, picking winners from losers based on real financial information. And at some level, that trickles all the way down to these traders on Wall Street who are trading with computer algorithms that the last trade by the microsecond, if you could beat it out by 0.018 milliseconds, you can make money like that. But it's all based on this sort of knowing that system. And then you have crypto, where there are no fundamentals. There's zero. There's nothing there but air. All it is an algorithm, the pure algorithm says, here's the amount of coins we have. Here's how often they get printed. It takes away all the knowledge. You don't have to know anything. All that matters is this. Who's the most popular girl in school this week? If you know who the most popular girl in school is, guess what? You can make a fortune in crypto because there are no fundamentals. It's who's the most popular, who's everyone, because whatever, it's all supply and demand. So it allows influencers who are the most popular girls in school, so to speak, it gives them a huge edge in making money because they are the in crowd that is able to manipulate this stuff because they know who the cutest girl in school is this week, and it changes from week to week or month. Elon is who's the cutest girl? Elon's the most beautiful girl of all. Elon says it's this, it automatically goes up. So if you go to traditional investments, there's all this knowledge and information that Wall Street's accumulated over generations. They have a huge edge. They lose that edge with crypto because it's only about who's buying what? There are no fundamentals. So it makes it a more egalitarian system. You could actually invest on a more level playing field because it's only about who's buying it, who's selling it. There are no fundamentals. So it allows people with no investment ability, no knowledge of how companies and business works to go in and make money trading crypto because it's only about technicals. How many people are buying it? How many are selling it? Is it the top or the bottom? That's it. That's why people love investing in crypto.
That's cool. That's a cool breakdown. A few other things, right? Like chatting to one of my mates the other day who works in, he's a trader. He was talking about like how like with these CBD companies and all that, like if there's a sort of a celebrity endorsement, there can be huge fluctuations like real early on. And then on the other side of that, mate, like you might not be following the Euros being American and all, but there's a sort of a European soccer tournament at the moment, and Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the world's best players, like removed Coke. Like when he did a press conference, there was bottles of Coke here like this on his table. For his
I just saw that.
And 4 billion dropped off. What does that tell us about the world of finance? The idea that endorsements can have such a profound and real effect. What does that tell us about the nature of that reality?
Well, I think that, there was a great scene in the movie Jerry Maguire, which I'm sure you've seen. And it's in the early part of the movie where he's talking about his career as a sports agent. And it all comes to a head early on where some kid goes up to a professional basketball player and he goes, "Oh, I can't sign that card. I only sign Topps cards," right? Because like that's his brand. That's a reality of capitalism. And it's like, and it's how companies like, whether it's a Facebook or how these companies monetize endorsements. So like an athlete might only get paid X dollars for being on the field, but he's building his personal brand and he's endorsing. So like anything else, there's a great side of that, a positive side of that, and there's a really negative side of that. Like I don't want to name names here, but there's a coin out there right now that's being endorsed by all the top influencers in the world right now. All of them, like major influencers. And they're out there publicly saying, this is the new greatest coin, this and that, right? And I'm shocked that these people would do that. They're really rich. The people endorsing it are richer than me. And they're endorsing this without any understanding that it's going to go to zero. It's like just another one of these things. They're getting paid massive amounts of money. They came to me yesterday and asked me to endorse it. And I said, no, I won't. I'm not going to endorse it. I said, I just don't know enough about it. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. But I think in that case, like for me, like as a financial person, it's one thing if you're a woman and you're known for beauty and stuff. Yeah, I guess if you endorse a coin, no one expects you to know any better. So I guess that person would be very careful about endorsing lipstick, but maybe not a crypto coin. For me, a coin represents I should know better than not to endorse that, right? But everything right now, Russell, is about this endorsing and celebrity and social, who's got the most followers and who can reach those followers. And it's powerful stuff. I don't think it's going away. I think it's an integral part of economies, and there's nothing wrong with it. But there should be, I hate regulations because like they always, the more regulations you put on stuff, typically just the more warped it gets. The people want to scam will find a way to scam anyway. And they usually just serve to create an even larger bureaucracy in the end of the day. It's a double-edged sword. But one would think the world would be better served if like there was some sort of rule that you can't endorse things that suck. Like you have to really actually believe in the things that you endorse, and then I think the world will be a lot better and safer. It's not like that now. You can just endorse anything you want, seemingly with impunity, even if it's a complete and utter scam. And that's the problem, because there's nothing wrong. An athlete loves a product, like Nike, for example. So they have Nike is a great product. They make good stuff, right? They have these top athletes that use Nike. There's nothing wrong with that. That to me it's congruent. It makes sense. And unless Nike is, you can say they're using children in factories. That's getting too deep into the rabbit hole for me. But I'm saying generally speaking here, they're giving value. I love their sneakers. I don't agree with all their advertising. Sometimes it bothers me, but good product makes sense. Yeah, I want to see what Tiger Woods is doing or Roger Federer or Michael Jordan or LeBron James, right? That's smart marketing. But then there's the other side of it, which is, and I'm going to keep using shitcoin.com, but any product, shitproduct.com is using a celebrity to separate people from their money because a celebrity needs to make extra money. That's the evil side.
And what about though when a product like Coke, sort of Nike, I get it, I'm wearing Nike shorts right now, but say Coca-Cola, it's it's not good for you, it's not good for your teeth, it's not this product is a fabrication. This? It's that's the stuff, Red Jordan. It's it's held together by faith. It's the idea Coca-Cola has managed to ally itself with the idea of youth and sexuality and vigor and power and joy through marketing. And then when a significant figure criticizes Coke or disavows Coke even through a gesture, it has an impact on it. I suppose what I'm saying is that there's in the world of finance, whether it's cryptocurrency or more conventional financial markets, so much it's not like we're making this product, it's valuable, would you like to invest? The whole it's like a mad game that's based on belief and faith. And like that, when you did your breakdown of your straight line system there, is essentially, I don't mean this as a criticism, but I think it's brilliant what you did. Brilliant. I love that shit. But like it's, in a sense, it's implanting realities in people's consciousness. And there's a difference doing it individually, on a scale, hustlers breaking out of their normal life to earn a few quid. We're all in the game. But when that's happening at an institutional level, giant corporations, Facebook, the big tech companies pushing you, manipulating consciousness, controlling it, when actually often, whether it's just a sugary brown drink or a company that's just interested in selling you bespoke marketing, what do you think about the morals and ethics behind that and these kind of straight line systems being played out at scale in that manner?
Yeah, well, certainly the straight line is very much like Madison Avenue on steroids. It's the same thing. It's an oral version of what they do with a one-sided sale, which is a commercial or an ad where they're just talking to you subliminally. They're doing it often subliminally, often, and sometimes above board to your face. I think far worse to me is when corporations try to put other messages of morality into their products, like this whole woke community. I think it's just fucking nonsense. And I'm the most liberal person you'll ever meet socially. And there's no more liberal person than me. It doesn't shock you that I don't care who fucks who and what. God bless whatever you fucking want in your life. Whatever makes you happy, I want you to be happy, right? And say what's it's like I grew up like that. My family, it's like nothing. I don't care what the color of you is. I'm prejudiced against two groups. Lazy people and stupid people. Other than that, I love everybody equally, okay? Those are my two prejudices, lazy and stupid, all right? I have no time for those people. Everyone else, great. But when I watch a commercial like by Gillette, and they're trying to, instead of selling me a razor, they're trying to sell me some woke attitude about bullying in schools. And I hate bullying. I think it's the worst thing in the fucking world. I think the bully kids is terrible, all right? And we were all bullied. Everyone was bullied at one point in their life. All right. But I don't want to be moralized to by Facebook. I don't think they should be the arbiters of what is right and wrong in society. They should stick to their product. Like it's when celebrities talk about politics, like, just shut the fuck up. Just shut up. It's like, listen, unless you're an expert in the field, whatever. Everyone's entitled to free speech, but I think that's the darker side where they're trying to almost shape the world into this new place that has nothing to do with their brand. And I think that's really, really sad. I think every time that happens in society, and you know what the whole undercurrent is? The ends justifies the means. That's what they're all saying. Whatever the end, and if you look back in history, anytime the ends justified the means, bad shit ended up happening in the name of that.
I think you're right as well, and I suspect that there's some degree of cynicism. You only have to investigate whether or not the affiliations that are being declared are along racial lines or gender or sexual lines. Usually you'll find that while there's a lot of artificial, overt stuff happening when it comes to who gets the money, they're not doing it at that end. They're not at the end of the money, making sure, let's make sure this is distributed fairly. Let's make sure that we're supporting these causes. There's never sacrifice. I guess one of the challenges, as a person that's gone through what you've gone through like a sort of a moral nadir, gone through sort of giddying high velocity life, space shuttle life, explosive life. One of the things that in my own version of that life, which varies in loads of ways, but has some crossovers, certainly identify with you a lot. For me, I've wound up in this place where I have to make some kind of connection with a value system that is transcendent of material things. I don't just mean in terms of acquiring stuff, because I like comfort. I like to be able to do what the fuck I want. Do you know what I mean? I don't like obstacles in my way. I don't like rules. I don't like nobody telling me what to do. I've got a lot of things that are pretty libertarian about me, but I've also got a sort of an anarchist side in the literal sense, as in I feel like communities ought to be able to organise themselves free from the intervention of either the state or big businesses that are, have got the game rigged to such a degree, So, and the thing that underwrites that, or at least stirs it and nurtures it in me, is this kind of belief in some idea of good, Jordan. An idea of that we can be beautiful and we can change the world. And when I listen to you and your sort of priapic flow, I think, man, this dude could do all sorts of, like you have done all kinds of, you continue to create amazing things. I wonder how this plays out in your spiritual, what I think I've heard you refer to as your highest value systems, how you apply this energy to that, where you apply it almost, I suppose, outside of the economic and business sphere.
So, over the years, I always have this internal struggle with me, like that. I did this stuff in 1988 through 95, really, right? There's this defined period of my life. And it's very difficult, just so you know, like you sort of like, there's this, you have this sort of this brand, which I have is my personal brand. It represents so much great stuff and a lot of bad stuff too, right? And I have my own internal struggle of how, okay, what's my message to the world? But also, how do I just feel as I move through the world myself? Like, what am I thinking? And I'll tell you what, it's very difficult because on some level, like I always said, my probably natural calling was to be a preacher. Is to go out there and really talk about this stuff and really talk about life and self-improvement and tapping into the source. And, I always thought that one day I would eventually gravitate towards doing that. Somehow, you get caught up in the daily struggles of life. And when I first came out of jail, it was about reestablishing myself financially. And then then that happened. And I became, really well known around the world. And I used it as a platform to travel and teach people sales around the world and business. And I feel really great about that because I think I spread a message of empowerment around the world that's impacted probably, God knows, tens of millions of people thankfully because of the movie, and they'll see my stuff online. I've spoken in front of millions of people. So I think that I certainly do have the ability to go in and make major impact in these areas. And I think I'm in the process. It's like this sort of process I'm in right now of doing that, of spreading a message. When you first came on, I said, it's really hard with these platforms. I want to stay on brand, but I want to make sure my message doesn't get lost. And I was just talking about this very thing. Like, there's things I want to get out to the public that the platforms don't want me to say. Not they're against what I'm saying. They don't think it's engaging enough that they'll make it go viral. So there's this really weird thing about, what makes money, what goes viral, and what's the best message for people. And I'm trying actively, as you heard, to make sure I integrate that stuff into my business as well. The message about self-empowerment. And I think it's a very important message. Spiritually, I'm one of these people that, I'm not sure about the whole, if, are we in a real or universe or a simulation? I think as scary as it sounds, it's pointing towards a simulation, and there's so many things that happen each day that make that a lot more easy to say, wow, that's why. So, that's why there's all these things are happening. Because it almost seems like my life is unreal in some ways, right? But I think, spiritually, I believe in God, but not like in some man sitting on a chair passing judgment. I believe more in the energy of the universe, and I believe in cause and effect and karma, and I believe that we don't quite die afterward. I think the biggest thing is that we're all not separate. I think we've evolved to think that we're separate. I think that's the biggest thing. This is really weird thing that the human evolutionary, our system of becoming self-aware has been this trick into thinking that we're all separate from one another, where in fact it's all like a shared consciousness. That's what I really believe.
Yeah, I believe that as well. And I believe that if you believe something, that you can make a lot of people believe it. If you believe in God and oneness, then my God help anybody that gets on the end of a phone with you telling them that that's reality. Because I've heard the way you sell, man. It's Jordan, it's so beautiful to talk to you. You're so unusual and brilliant and fast and varied. It's a really wonderful mind to encounter. I'm really grateful to be able to chat to you like this.
Well, I feel the same way about you, honestly. That's stroking you. I have to say that you're probably one of the most well-spoken people I've ever heard in terms of your ability to get esoteric points across in an engaging way. You certainly, if you were on the phone, boy, I could have done it. You was a young Strattonite, Russell, you would have just absolutely smashed it on the telephone. This is for certain.
I could have done it. I'd have risen up through them ranks, wouldn't I? But I might have died at one of them parties, mate. I'm not good at controlling it. You'd have been fishing me out of some pool.
Exactly. You'd have been fun on the yacht, for sure. No doubt about it in your heyday.
Amazing stuff. Oh, well, I hope we can stay and maybe talk about some of these things about social media and
Absolutely.
like possibilities for collaboration should an opportunity present itself. I'd certainly be grateful.
Me too, my friend. Thanks for this. This is really great.
Great to talk to you. Good luck with your day.
Thanks. Take care.